The SAP Technical System landscape. In this video, you'll learn the importance of ensuring your SAP Technical System landscape is properly designed and managed on your project. The video is divided into the following topics. What is defined as the SAP system landscape? When and how is the SAP system landscape established? And how to manage and document your SAP system landscape. So let's first have a look at what is defined as the SAP system landscape. So the SAP system landscape is the physical SAP systems and the SAP instances defined within those systems. It's also the bolt-on components, if you're using such on your project, on top of the SAP system. That can be scanning software, utilities, there can be archiving, and so on. So it's bolt-on components that it's dedicated to SAP. And it is the transport infrastructure and process between your SAP systems and instances. What the systems landscape is not. So it is not non-SAP related systems with no interface and no relation to the SAP process. It is also not legacy systems which is interfaced or not interfaced with SAP. And it is also not the network. So you can say the system landscape should include those components which directly is involved in the SAP process, and mainly this is software that is coming from SAP itself or add-on components from either SAP or third-party vendors, which is 100% integrated into the SAP software. So with that definition, let's try and have a look at when and how is the SAP system landscape established. So we have here the reference, the different phases of a traditional local SAP implementation. Project preparation, business blueprint, realization, final prep, and go live. So the system landscape is developed and implemented by the basis/infrastructure team, and it has to be implemented ahead of the functional teams. Basically, this means you need to ensure that the different systems is available when they are needed and before they are needed. And those systems are during project preparation, early business blueprint, your functional team will need a sandbox environment for demo purposes, education purposes, but also to support the design of the solution. They might need to go in and test and investigate certain solutions to the requirements that is raised. Before realization, you need the development system, both for system configuration, that means customization of the SAP standard process, but also if your project has any RISE-F development scope, which most projects have. Then during realization, before you go into system integration, testing, and training, you will need a test training system, also often referred to as quality assurance. And during the final preparation phase, you will still continue using the test training system, but you will of course need before go live to have the final production system, and you have a task for doing the production deployment onto that system. So with the systems installed and established, the systems will be ongoingly managed by the basis/infrastructure team. And on the chart here I say basis infrastructure because on many projects the technical team take care of both the basis but also general infrastructure tasks such as interfaces in out of the SAP system, mail responders, and so on. But it can also be that this is very clear, separated, so that the basis team is purely basis work inside SAP, and the infrastructure team is separate, specialized in other topics such as specific legacy systems, network, database administration, and OS, hardware, and so on. So it depends how you have organized your project, and normally this relates to the size of your project. So with that, let's have a look at how to manage and document your SAP system landscape. So there is a number of documentation or deliverables that should be put in place. The first one is the system landscape strategy. This is normally done very early in the project initiation, where you start up thinking on how my landscape going to look like. And this is of course because this is related to hardware, it's related to software licenses, and so on. So it's important to know, to support the project I'm going to undertake now, what systems do I need and how will my system landscape look. That has to be accompanied by a system landscape design document where you deep into the detailed design and you document the detailed design of your system landscape. You will also need system landscape support procedures both during your project and after go live, and they might be different. It might be different teams, it might be different levels of support provided. And for all these three documents, those will be supported by technical schematic diagrams, network diagrams, system architecture, file system, and so on, as needed to make sure you have the complete picture. So here we have tried to just list some of the items that should be in what we call a system landscape design document. This is the most important of three main documents, and sometimes it actually combines the strategy and the system landscape design in one document, where you just write the strategy part first and then you build on that document in the next phase. And that's absolutely fine. The most important thing is that the document have the content you need, and it can be referred to all the stakeholders on the project, and is used actively. So some of the things that should be in your system landscape design document is you should have an explanation of the terminology used, so everyone, including non-infrastructure people, understand what are the terminology that is to be used. You should have standard clients in the SAP system, a clear overview of what are the clients that you are going to build and that will be used throughout your project. General system restrictions, if there's access, roles and responsibilities, and so on, needs to be clear to everyone what is the restriction of your system and who can do what, including the instance strategy. So one is clients, the other one is instance. So the technical information that gives people the full holistic view of how is your different SAP systems set up and is working together. SAP environments in XXX, and XXX is the project. So in complex projects, you might have separate system environments with different clients, different instances. How does it all link together? How is the clients deployed? What do you copy? What do you install? So everyone understand, as when the basis team is building the different systems which the functional teams are relying on, how is this going to happen, and when, by who, how. Client creation, you will during the project need to refresh, copy, delete or clean out different clients. So how is this going to happen? So the client creation process, including if during the way you need a change for additional clients or changes to the existing clients, what is the change process? For the functional team also, the transport procedures is very relevant when you go into configuration and development, and you need to be clear on this. As mentioned in the ABAP lessons, very important to document this and have naming standards, because otherwise you might be in a mess when you're doing the final production deployment. OS user and OS node implementation, the functional teams will during the design phase and the build phase have to implement certain nodes to solve certain problems. It might even be customized nodes that is created by SAP to support requests through the SAP marketplace. So how will those nodes be implemented, and what is the process for doing so. So all of this should be the standard table of content in your system landscape design document, which should then be communicated to everyone. So with that in place, how are you going to manage and document the system landscape? Let's try to just summarize the steps. So first, you document it, you communicate it, you monitor that the rules, the policies, the roles and responsibilities, the processes that you put in place for managing your SAP system landscape is adhered to. That means it is being followed. And if it's not, you need to enforce that, especially the roles and responsibilities are clear. You cannot have violations here, because you will get the systems out of sync. You will get difficulties when you're doing the final production deployment if you don't have a clear picture of the transports, the relation between them, who's doing, who has been the author of different components that need to be transported and so on, and who's doing the actual production deployment. So you really need to communicate so everyone have the same picture, monitor that it's followed, and enforce it if it's not. There cannot be any exceptions here, otherwise you will get in a mess. Example of a system environment. This is a technical diagram on a hardware level and how the different hardware components fits together. If we look at the system landscape overview, so here is an example of a system landscape architecture put in place, where you have, exactly as we've seen in the other chart, you have your development, quality assurance, training, production, and you have a naming convention and certain clients with certain purposes. So again, this is very important that when you do this, you agree on a clear and logic naming standard. Everyone understand what is the definition, what are each clients used for. And again, keep it simple. This one is a fairly complex setup, will be much simpler, but again, you don't want to be limited by suddenly missing a client or need a client for a specific purpose, and you don't have the flexibility to build that, either limited by hardware, time, or whatever the constraint might be. So make sure you have flexibility and you have the necessary clients that you foresee you will need. And then good advice here, don't forget the culture aspect. Most SAP projects today is global or have global people, or might be from international companies. When you design this, keep in mind if there's any cultural practices that you need to factor in. For instance, the numbering. I've seen on a number of projects that you skip certain number ranges because it is bad luck, or you consistently use certain number ranges because it's good luck. So 8 is a lucky number in Chinese, for instance. So I've seen 8 being used extensively in Asia projects. Another example of the in this case the system change process. Here it is then explained how is the different copies and refresh of the clients and the transport going to be linked together. Of course, this has to be accompanied by some explanation, but you need to have this overview and you need to have it communicated, of course, with necessary explanations to support it. SAP transport strategy. There's different ways of doing the transport strategy: major changes, minor changes, special changes, ad hoc, certain emergency changes. So how are this going to fit together? And again, this is something that the basis team has to put in place, that has to be endorsed by the functional team, and it has to be communicated widely and enforced, monitored, validated, and so on during the project. So roles and responsibility in preparing and executing your transport strategy is very important. The process for verifying the transports, as stressed again, is very important, and you need to have a process for monitoring and controlling especially your process, your transport, but also your client copies and the access to the system. This is very important, and it's something that you need to ensure as the project manager that your basis team is on top of. With that, let's do a summary. So after completing this video, you should now have a good understanding of the importance of ensuring your SAP technical system landscape is properly designed and managed on your project. Again, we have much more material that we'll be happy to share, so please contact us through the forum, and we will have a dialogue, and we will help you both with specific problems and share whatever we can in the general community. Thank you.